tatta dhimta takita dhimta dhimta tam. For many of us, these are very uncertain times, perhaps more than we've ever experienced in our lives before. And I wanted to share a practice with you today, which I hope will help you perceive or have a different lens on uncertainty. The theme of uncertainty or unease has been very present in the last week in the work that I'm doing with women through my individual programs and in the group classes, and actually in my own life and in my own practice. And this has been interesting because the women I work with individually, they all have very different deities. Each of them choose their own deity, and so they're all quite different. But somehow, all of them have come to those aspects of the deities that in some way have to do with this theme of uncertainty and unease. So I say unease because the way in which uncertainty translates into the body as a sensation is of unease. So we have this sensation, as they say in the dance practice, the sensation of deep unease, deep disquiet, deep agitation, a certain kind of restlessness. And it's great, it's powerful, but it's very deep, it's very subtle. It's almost this underpinning unease for which you can't really find a story, you can't find a word. It's always there, it's always kind of bubbling deep in the body as the sensation. And seeing how this theme of unease as a practice was emerging from my individual programs and my group classes, and also for me, I thought that it must be, as these things usually are, it must be something about the time, something about the energy of the times, something about the need of the times to consider this practice. And so here's my offering to you today. I'm going to use an example of one of the archetypes, and that is a better way of speaking to you about this, because often these are embodied practices and they're not very easy to translate into words. So an archetypal or a deity example will help with that. So one of the women that I work with, her deity of choice is Rudra or Shiva. Rudra is the ancient form of Shiva. And one attribute of Shiva is where he is the blue-throated deity, the deity with the blue throat. And the story about this is that when the gods and demons, at the beginning of time, the gods and demons were churning the big, vast ocean of consciousness, and they were churning this so that the attributes of consciousness, like form, came out. Feeling, form, prosperity, life, death, beauty, all this was emerging through this process of churning. And suddenly, out of this churning emerged this poison called halahala or kalakuta, and these words have very specific meanings, and I'll go to them in a minute. But this poison was very subtle, and just by merely smelling it, one could die. And so the gods and demons were dying just with the scent of this poison. The word halahala in Sanskrit actually means deep unease. It means a great unease, a great agitation, a great anxiety. And the word kalakuta often refers to a certain black plant, which is an underground tuber plant, again, the scent of which could actually kill. It was a toxic plant. So the gods knew that they couldn't do anything about this, and that the only god that was able to do something was Shiva. So consider Shiva. Shiva is that aspect of consciousness that is about embodying consciousness as movement, as dance. It's a very different language. It was a coming into form, or an aspect of consciousness where form was as movement as dance. So Shiva was asked to help them out, and what Shiva did was he drank the poison, he drank the halahala, but he didn't swallow it. He held it in his throat. So he didn't spit it out, nor did he swallow it. And hence the blue throat. One of the most vital powers that Shiva used in order to hold the halahala in his throat was Shakti, or the power, the divine feminine wisdom of consciousness. In later stories, it actually became more literal. So in the later stories about the same myth, it became that Shiva drank the poison, and his consort Parvati, again the manifestation of the divine feminine, she actually came and held his throat so that he didn't swallow the poison. Either way, the really important wisdom of the divine feminine that ensured that Shiva didn't die by swallowing the poison, and that he could hold the poison in his throat, was a result of this feminine wisdom that came to his help. When we move this into an embodied practice, it is absolutely magical. So when we move away from the literal story and the literal movement to the more embodied practice, and we bring in this feminine practice and movement, we absolutely can feel how that movement of grace, of non-duality, of gentleness, of subtleness, of this kind of absolutely deep, subtle knowing. You know, the feminine always knows more than it reveals. That is the nature of the feminine. And when we do the movements that go to these attributes, you really feel how this holding, how this unease starts to give space. And this is what I myself experienced last week, because when I was doing my own practice around this theme of unease, what I experienced was this breath coming in to that sensation of unease, this space and breath. It was like this kalakuta, which refers to this thick mass. It was like it dissolved, and it kind of gave some breadth and space. So it's not about resisting, it's not about giving in, it's not that you can push it away, but there's something that happens when you match that sensation of unease with these movements of the goddess practice. Something happens, something shifts, a space opens up, there is breath, and you're able to move in it, move with it, just like Shiva dances with his blue throat. And the beautiful suggestion of the story and the practice is that unease or uncertainty is an aspect of reality. It is there together with everything else, together with prosperity, with beauty. And it's not demonic, because remember that the gods and demons were already out there. But this is something that is a characteristic, an attribute, and it can be like the venom of the venomous animals and insects. In fact, they say that it is of the same nature as the venom of snakes and other venomous creatures. And so it is both, it's something that can both kill and also something that can both release or heal, depending on our own movement and our own partnership or interplay with this sense of uncertainty and unease. So I do hope that this may help you consider uncertainty, which is so pervasive and so strong and so present in our times, which of course for many of us may be experienced as the sensation of this deep unease within us that is ever present. But I hope that this may help you bring some of that feminine wisdom, that feminine knowingness and subtlety to gently unpack and create space so that we can move and dance.